Welcome back to the Stormcrow Show. I'm Brady.
And I'm Josh. And what are we discussing today, Brady?
Yeah, because, we didn't talk about this at all, and we haven't been thinking about this. Well, that's totally a lie. But just so that everybody else knows, besides me and Josh, we are going to be talking about the idea that there should be a restricted list in addition to the ban list for the modern format of Magic the Gathering.
Yep.
So, Josh, why don't you talk to us a little bit about why we think this is and, kind of lead up to it a little bit.
Sure. So, and we want to also caveat that right now, Modern is in a healthy, diverse format. That's a fair assessment, right? I know pros are saying it. I read articles saying it. Everyone seems to think that. So, we're not saying this is, must be done now. We're just saying this is something Wizards should consider doing.
To maintain the longevity of a healthy format.
Yes. The big thing that kind of got us to think we should bring this up was the Pro Tour is now going to bring back Modern. They took it out after the Eldrazi Winter fiasco, saying that it just wasn't very conducive for that, but everybody likes watching Modern, I guess. They like watching Magic the Gathering being played. And I don't blame them, because it's so diverse right now. There's, you could play almost anything. Well, not anything, but you can play a lot of things. As a result, some people might be a little skeptical. Ever since, when Splinter Twin got banned, that was banned right before Pro Tour Oath of the Gatewatch, and a lot of people, rightly or wrongly, I tend to think that this was not true, but a lot of people felt that this was done because Wizards wanted to shake up the format. Now, I think the Splinter Twin ban was correct, but the timing was very poor, and of course a lot of people wanted to play Splinter Twin, or had spent money to play Splinter Twin, and suddenly couldn't. And their deck died. A horrible death.
Yeah, so, and it's kind of inevitable that as new sets come out, there's probably a good chunk of brand new cards coming out with each new set.
Yep.
And as a result of that, the ban list is just going to continue to grow, and ideally it'd be nice if the ban list stayed as small as possible, but with new cards coming out, right now the ban list is, I think it's 50 plus cards are banned, or somewhere around there, and I don't know, I didn't look it up to be sure, but the fact is that it's only going to continue to grow.
Yeah.
So by offering a restricted list, though, a lot of the cards that are on the ban list right now may have the chance of being restricted instead.
Yep.
And, granted, this may mean that we have an extremely large restricted list in the future just because of how cards interact with each other.
Right.
But I know that I would much rather have a huge restricted list than a huge ban list.
Yeah, because then you're at least allowed to play one card.
Exactly.
And it's not like Vintage, which has all these tutors that kind of make up for that. We're talking you have to play one card.
Yeah, exactly.
And also, because it's not just new cards, it's also new ruling interactions, right? Like how split cards interacted with the free cast cards. Remember that rule change?
Yep. And, the fact is every new set has new mechanics.
Yep.
With Ixalan we got Enrage. Now we're getting Ascend.
Yeah.
There's just always new mechanics, and it's impossible to know for sure how every single card is going to interact.
Yeah, definitely. And again, to emphasize, this is in addition to the ban list, not replacing the ban list for Modern.
Sure.
But yeah, we kind of touched on it, but here's some of the benefits, right? First, it lessens those field bad moments. We just basically, that's the big one, right? Yep. You got your Splinter Twins, they got banned. Now what do I do? I think that's probably the big one. Obviously, maybe one copy still doesn't do it, but that's not necessarily true. Sometimes it's just a matter of, if you restrict it, maybe I get my 5 copies. I play 4 Kiki-Jikis and a Splinter Twin.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. What other ones are there?
Yeah, so it also lowers the stress of reprints being needed. So
Yeah.
this is both for new cards being printed or reprinted,
Yeah.
but also, like, you know, for people who have been playing the game for a while, you know, chances are they have at least a portion of their collection are banned or restricted cards, or banned cards right now. And, you know, it's just kind of like they're just kind of taking up space, and you'd really like to be able to use them. But the fact is that those cards right now aren't worth a whole lot.
Yep.
Just because you can't use them. Whereas if you were allowed to use one, you might be like, okay, you know, keep one, sell off the other three.
Yeah.
You know, more selling means more different people are getting a hold of them, probably. So, because you're just not going to need more than one.
Yeah. And I think the other big one maybe is, you know, for Wizards of the Coast, they like to, you know, during the Eldrazi Winter scenario, if I recall correctly, they had, you know, from Pro Tour Oath of the Gatewatch till the next ban and restricted list announcement, they didn't ban either Ayavugan or Eldrazi Temple. They waited another ban restricted list cycle to do that. Okay. If that's the case, then let's say they print something really busted again, which could happen, right? It's happened before. It'll happen again, I'm sure, and it just, there's no way to know. If that's the case, what happens? Well, do they just ban it right away after the next ban cycle? Or what if they restrict it just to see if that kind of lowers the temperature of it?
Sure.
Well, not temperature. Well, you know what I mean. It lowers the stress on that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you know, kind of going along with that, we know that Wizards of the Coast, they test for Standard, but they don't test for Modern.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, you can kind of see where sometimes decisions were made that they wanted to have these cards in Standard, when really something a little bit better could have been printed in Standard, but because of the danger of it being available in Modern, they had to go with just a more average card.
Or sometimes really bad.
Or sometimes really bad. And as a result of this might actually increase both the power level in Standard, because they're not going to be as concerned if it gets into Modern, because if it does get out of control, which there's never ways to know for sure if something's going to get out of control in Modern, but if for some reason it does, they can always restrict it.
Yeah.
You know, and players aren't going to hate them for it.
Plus, if they want to unban something, they can maybe restrict it first. Like, I don't know. I mean, we commented that Stoneforge Mystic might get unbanned.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's say they're really nervous about that. Well, what if they had a restricted list? We'll just simply restrict it instead and see what does that impact have.
Yeah, a good testing pool.
Does it warp the format terribly? Like when it's available?
Right.
It's hard to test, of course, but it gives them sort of this sort of nice middle ground for everyone to work with.
Now, as a result of this, we do realize that there are going to be some objections that people will have, and we tried to nail down a couple of them, though if you guys think of other reasons this shouldn't be happening, you know, please leave comments. You know, Josh and I have thought a lot about this, so chances are there's material that we've thought of that isn't going to make it into this video.
Right.
But we'll gladly talk about it with you.
And I should mention, this is going to be a 2-part episode, so if you do respond and we have a chance to, read them, and before we record the part 2 episode, I think that would be very helpful, so then maybe we can address that, or maybe we change the video or something if there's something so blatantly terrible that we didn't think about that could undermine our whole idea here. But I don't think it's at that point. I don't think we would have... I think we would have caught something that bad.
Yeah.
So there's 2 big arguments, though, that come to mind, or that I've heard. The big one is the draw my best card equals I win scenario. And there's really 3 or 4 instances where this can happen. You could obviously say, well, I can mulligan down to just that best card. Okay, first of all, if the card's that busted where if you have to start with it in your opening hand... and you have to mulligan down to it, and it still would be busted, it probably should be banned anyways. So that would not be restricted anyways. A good example might be like Hypergenesis. Well, you don't want that in your hand. In fact, just the opposite. But you can mulligan down to just making sure you don't draw it or don't have it in your hand. In other scenarios, if it's like, well, if I have 4 copies of it, is that going to be a problem? Like, if this is turn 10, I need to top deck that lightning bolt to punch that person for that last 3 damage. Or a Snapcaster to flash it back. Whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, and you commented something too, like, it's like the sideboard problem. Like, it's like, I mean, usually you don't have 4 copies of a sideboard card.
No. So, yeah, I mean, the thing is that if you're that concerned about one card being an issue, there's a reason you have a sideboard. You know, I mean, it's just that simple. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, sorry, and to mention one other thing. If a deck is dependent on one card, like, if, like, again, it's, like, literally is dependent on one card, if it's too broken, then it should be banned anyways. If your deck is designed somehow that it just would use that one card, like one copy of one card because it's restricted, the deck involved probably needs some tweaks.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, and you know, it's important to clarify, and if it's all right, I'll tackle the second argument.
Sure.
But it's important to clarify, you know, there's singleton formats that exist, and the fact is they work because they work, and you're like, oh, well, they only have one of each card. But the difference is, you know, the cards in this pool are only limited to Modern. We don't have access to all the really busted tutors that Legacy and Vintage have.
Right.
Which makes a huge difference in how consistent your deck is.
Yeah.
So, but the other argument about this is simply the fact that, well, it's too complicated to have 2 lists. I mean, EDH kind of ran into this problem when they had 2 lists for a while on cards that were banned as well as cards that were banned as your commander.
Right.
And a lot of people just got really frustrated with that, and eventually they kind of just, you know, built them into one, and, you know, they unbanned some cards, banned some other cards, you know, whatever. But people felt like it was too complicated. Well, you know, the thing is that we have the internet. You know, it's really easy to Google stuff like this.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you just Google banned list for Modern, and it will pop up.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's just that simple. And on top of that, it's like, you know, we're playing probably one of the most complicated card games ever. I mean, new rules every so often, new mechanics more often. I mean, it's just, I mean, it's already a complicated game. So, you know, I don't want to sound mean, but it's like, if you can't keep up with 2 lists, you know, I don't know what you're doing playing this game anyways.
And I can see the ban list distinction there, because, you know, it's like, was it banned as your commander or banned in general? It's like, well, the reasons why can be just kind of unclear from a commander standpoint even.
Yeah.
Whereas restricted list, it's like, okay, do I get it? Yes. How many copies? 1 or 4?
Yeah.
Or 1 or up to 4, basically.
Yeah.
Very easy question to ask.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, is just the fact that the ban list and the restricted list, they're just not going to be that big. Like, compared with how many cards we have access to, they're just not going to form a huge percentage of that.
Yeah, it'll grow. We are saying it's going to grow, and that's a reason to be concerned, but it's not going to be like, oh, wow, we're at 2,000 cards banned.
Yeah.
Maybe 500 years from now if Magic still exists, but, you know, until
Yeah,
then.
exactly.
Well, yeah, so we're going to go, we'll stop here.
Yep.
And we'll go to part 2. That'll be out coming up next week. But give us your thoughts. I think it's worth a discussion, and it would be good to hear from you guys. And like I said, next week, or I should say Brady said this, next week we'll discuss some examples of what could be restricted from the ban list.
Yeah, we'll get a little bit more into the nitty-gritty of it. So, thank you so much for watching.
Yep, I'm Josh.
I'm Brady.
This has been the Storm Crow Show. Thanks for watching.